What's up, guys? Welcome to Girlfriend Therapy Podcast, a year of conversations. I am your host, Kwanza. Super excited to be here with you guys this week, guys. So, this week we're actually doing things a little bit different. I'm going to take a step back and give you guys a little bit of insight or background on Girlfriend Therapy, on the podcast, on the year of conversations, just a little bit of background. So, when I began, and I think I may have mentioned this during the earlier video, but when I began this series at the top of the year, my mandate for myself was that it was not to be stressful. It wasn't to be stressful for myself or any of my guests. And so I tried to create a space here where it's very flexible and is very informal. And so, I don't want anybody to feel obligated. I don't want anybody to feel stressed about, joining me for a conversation. And I think there's probably a natural level of stress that one can feel when you're doing something like this. But I always try to make it really comfortable for my guests. And so I share all that background to say that in order to do that, there is a level of flexibility that I must maintain at all times and trying to pivot and have the conversations and really just support my guests really in the effort of having a really good conversation that's not only therapeutic and interesting, but then is also therapeutic and perhaps or interesting and perhaps therapeutic for our listeners. And so with that, like I said, there's a level of flexibility that I must maintain at all times. And so I say that to say this week we actually had a guest who was going to join me, but she had an emergency and she wasn't able to join this week for a recording. And so it was kind of last minute cancellation. So we kind of had to pivot and figure out, okay, so what are we going to do? And because it is a flexible platform, I wasn't going to stress about what we're going to do. I was just like, okay, what are we going to do? and we figured it out, and now here we are. But I wanted to give you guys that background just to let you know that, when I invite people to come and be a part of it, I want you to know without question. Yeah, if you say that you want to be a part of it and you're going to be a part of it, I trust and I block out that space for you to be a part of it. But I want to, first and foremost, I don't want anybody to feel obligated, because who wants to have a forced conversation? That's no fun for anybody. But then I also don't want you to feel stressed if an emergency comes up and you have to push it. And again, just some, background, full transparency. There are several episodes that we've recorded where, there was an emergency on a part of one individual, or, so I recorded on a different day. We, very adjustable and flexible with regards to timing. So very much, being flexible in this platform and in this space. So just wanted to share that just to kind of let you guys know how we're moving and how things are transpiring over here. So with all of that, those are little housekeeping nuggets, a little housekeeping that I wanted to share with you guys. But because we have this free episode, I figured I would do something fun, something that I've been wanting to do. You guys may be familiar, Kerry Washington. She has a podcast, The Street You Grew Up On. And I love watching that podcast. I love the conversations that she had with people. I would love to be on that podcast one day, God willing. But I thought it would be fun just to kind of, steal a little bit from her from her format and just kind of do a little street I grew up on with you guys. So I'm going to probably put the questions in, because I think it will make more sense for me to drop the questions in I'll probably ask the questions and still drop the questions in. We'll figure it out, but we're going to have fun with it. Again, there's no stress, no pressure, just a little bit of fun. I actually watched a couple of her episodes and pulled a few questions. I don't know if I'll get to all the questions, but we'll watch the time and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. So let me pull up the questions that we're going to start with. And I think I pulled like 15 questions, so I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but of course, the obvious question that we will start with is, what is the name of the street that you grew up on? So the street that I grew up on is Hobart Street, Hobart. And so the next question is, where is that street located? So you guys may know, I always say West Philadelphia, born and raised. So I was born and raised in West Philadelphia. And so Hobart Street is a little block, 1400 block of Hobart Street is a little street, little narrow row house, or little narrow street, complete with row homes. And it is in the center of West Philadelphia, a little small row home, little row home on Hobart Street is where I grew up. So tell me about the house. Like I said, the house was on a street of row homes. So it is a 3-story row home. Has a basement, first floor, and then a top level. And so the basement it wasn't really a finished basement. It was kind of finished, but it really wasn't. Like it wasn't like a decked out basement. Like the walls were cemented walls. There was cemented floors, although I think sometimes we would have carpet on the floors. I remember there was a pool table in the basement for a little bit of time. I remember there was a record player down there. There were couches down there. So we would go down there. And I'm trying to think as I was growing up, I remember the pool table. I remember a record player and I remember a couch. So I think that we would go down there, and not even a record player, a boom box. So it wasn't even a record player, it was a boom box. So we would go down there, we would put tapes in a boom box and we would sit and we would play pool and, we would just kind of hang out. So that's where we spent, I think when we had company, we would spend time in the basement if we had company in the house, especially as teenagers. And then the top level, you would come up the basement stairs, you had like a little back kitchen, and I have to sneeze. Sorry. You had a little back kitchen. You had your kitchen, which was, really small kitchen. Then you had like I guess what would have traditionally been a dining room. But as I was growing up, it was kind of like an informal living room. And then you had your formal living room, which was the living, room that you weren't allowed to go into. This was the room that had the plastic on a couch, that stayed clean, had the Bible on a coffee table with the 23rd Psalm, opened on the 23rd Psalm. So that was the room that you were not really able to go into. There was no TV in that room. It was really just kind of like a formal meeting room. And of course, the kids were not allowed in that room for the longest time. I remember over the fireplace, there was a painting of my mother, and my brother is supposed to send me that painting. I'm praying that he does, but there was a painting of my mother that sat over the fireplace, and it was this beautiful painting that was done. I think it was done like in 68 or something, he shared with me. So I remember that sitting over the fireplace. I also remember in that house, in the informal living room, there was like this record player. It was like a record player slash console. It was like this whole contraption, but if you open it, like you can close it and you can put knickknacks on top of it. But if you opened it, there was like the record player where you can actually play your records. And then I think on some of the compartments on the side of it, you can actually put records in there. I don't remember us having a whole lot of records. I mean, we had enough, I think. And I remember, playing records on there, but it was like a nice this really long console, wooden kind of console. So, and then you had your couch and you had your mirrors and all that stuff. So you would kind of sit in that space, listen to the music or whatever. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then around Christmas, the formal living room where we weren't able to go into, we would be able to go into that room like around Christmas, because that's where my mom would put the Christmas tree. So that's something I remember about that. That's probably a lot that I included in that one little tell me about the house. So the fourth question, who lived in a house with me? So when I was growing up, it was just my mom and my 3 siblings. So it was 5 of us, my mother, myself, my brother, my 2 sisters. So the 5 of us lived in a house together. I think in the earlier years, my oldest sister lived with my aunt on the southwest side of Philadelphia. She lived there, I think, to help her like with her children, and she went to school on that side of town. And so for my earlier years, it was just myself, my middle sister, and my brother. And I'm the youngest, so everybody was like older than me. So it was me, my brother, then my middle sister, then my oldest sister. And so the younger, the 3 of us lived with my mother, for the earlier part of the years. And my middle sister and we shared a room, and my brother had the back room to himself. But then as my older sister got a little bit older, she moved back to our house with us. And I have to ask her, because I'm not sure how long she didn't live there, but she moved back in the house with us. And so she took what was called the back room. That was the back bedroom. And then me and my sister continued to share the middle room. My mother had the front room, which was the master bedroom. And my brother, he would sleep in the basement or sleep on a couch downstairs. So that's how the house was made up. So what were the sounds in my house? I think the sounds in my house was, there were a lot of sounds. I think music was a sound that I often heard in a house. Um, Although we were not like a musical family, but music was definitely a sound that we heard in a house. I think laughter was a sound that we heard in a house. Like my mom was very much the like the party person. So a lot of people always gravitated towards her. She was always like a really open, love people, love community. So people would gather at the house. There would be people either sitting on a porch talking with my mom. They would be in the kitchen chatting it up with my mom. So it's always the sound of people talking and chatter and laughter and music was probably the sounds that I remember the most. What were the smells? So the smells that I can remember in my house, first of all, my mom was an amazing cook and my oldest sister was an amazing cook as well. So there, you would always smell like, I can think of like beans cooking on the stove, or chicken was being fried, or a meatloaf was in the oven. Like always the smell of food cooking was a popular smell. And my mom was very much a domestic. So she, like when she cleaned, she would like wipe down. So you smell the smell of pine saw was always a strong smell in a house, because she was always like wiping things down. Like my job as a kid was to wipe down the baseboards. That was like my job. So she would give me a bucket with a soapy rag, and I would have to go and scrub the baseboards. So there was always this fresh smell of pine saw, just a clean smell in the air, always. And then there were incense. I think that was another smell that I remember. My mom always had incense burning. So that was definitely another smell that I remember in my house. What are my fondest memories? Ooh, so many really good memories in a house. But some of my fondest memories is watching my mom like on a Friday night. She's getting ready to go out with her friends. She would get dressed, but I think even before that, my oldest siblings, they would often go and spend time like with my cousins, or so they will spend a weekend. But I was very much a homebody. I was very much a mama's girl. Like I love to be at home. I love to be up under my mother. Like she couldn't go to the bathroom without me. I was that kid that when my mom was sitting on the toilet, I was sitting on the side of the tub talking to her. Like I was very much a homebody. But I would love moments when I would just got to get to lay on my mom's bed, which a lot of times we didn't have a lot of televisions in the house. I do remember like the TV being in my mom's room. I think that was like really the main television in the house growing up. So we would, as a family at times would sit down and watch television. Like if there was a show that, we all got a chance to watch, like the Great Pumpkin Patch, Charlie Brown or something like that. We would all gather in my mom's room, sit on the floor, and we would eat like pound cake and butter pecan ice cream. That was always a really good thing that we would do, just kind of sit and eat that and watch a movie or watch a television program. But what was special was if I got a chance to lay in my mom's bed, which we didn't get to do a lot. But if I got to lay in my mom's bed, that was always special. And I would get to lay in her bed, like if I was sick, or like if I came home from school and I was sick or something, I would get to lay in her bed. Or sometimes when my siblings would like go away for the weekend, and I would, it's just me and my mom, and she would just let me lay on like the foot of her bed, and I would watch TV with her. That was always a great memory. But then I think also like I would, watch my mom get dressed. My mom was very fashionable. So I would love to just sit and watch her as she was like in her mirror trying to figure out what she was going to wear. She was like going out with her girls and her friends, and I would watch her in the mirror. She would like pull out her outfit, and it was always something very fabulous and very stylish. But then I would watch her put on her makeup, and she didn't wear a lot of makeup, and but she would always take her lipstick, and she wore like this it was like a darker colored lipstick, or it could have been a color like this, where she would like put the lipstick on her lips, and she would put a patch on her cheek, and then she would just like, rub it up in her cheeks or whatever to kind of So her lipstick acted as a lipstick as well as a blush. But she would do her makeup and she would always look just absolutely beautiful. And I can remember her taking her curls out, her rollers out, and her curls falling. But she would always be fabulous when she would go out. And I love to watch her get dressed to go out. So that was some of my fondest memories. What was a normal school day like for me? Of course, you get up in the morning. Now, because I was the youngest, I think my earlier years in elementary school, my brother and my sister were in elementary school with me. My oldest sister was always like, if I was in like first grade, she was in like middle school. So I don't remember being in school with her, but I do remember being in school with my brother and my other sister, especially in elementary. And so a typical day would be, you get up and you go, like they had the early morning breakfast program. So we would typically get up and go for breakfast. I don't know, that made me emotional. We would get up and we'd go for breakfast. And then from there, you would go to your classroom and, you would spend your day in your class. And there's so many memories and so many things that I can say about just being in school in West Philadelphia. But, you would go through your regular school day. Typically, when I would come home, I would either walk home, like my school was right around the corner from me. So it was just like two streets that you had to cross. Like the next street from Hobart was Wanamaker, which was a really small block, similar to the block I grew up on. And then the next street after that was a bigger street, which was 57th Street. Was it 57? No, 58th Street rather. It was 58th Street and yeah, 58th Street. Is it 58th or 50? Oh my gosh, 58th or 59. I can't even remember. Was it 57th or 58th? I think it was 58th Street. Was where the corner that my school was on. But that was a larger street. So of course you had the crossing guard that will, walk you across the street. But I would walk with other kids in the neighborhood. There was always a group of us. We would go to Frank's Corner Store, which was like right there on the corner. And if you had some money left over, from your lunch or whatever, like my mom would give us allowance, maybe a quarter a day or something like that. And on your way home, you would stop past Frank's and you would, buy something from some candy from the candy store or, whatever you had enough money to buy. And that was kind of like the snack that you would take home. So you would get your snack, you would go home, you would do your homework. So I can remember like sitting on my bed. That's where I did my homework. I would go to my bed and sit on my bed and do my homework there. My sisters would help. My brother would help if I needed help with the homework. But when I get home, 9 times out of 10, like my mom might be outside, especially if it was a nice day, she might be outside on a porch with, talking to some of the neighbors and, the kids are just coming home and you kind of go and do your homework. I always loved to take a nap. So even as a kid, I was a napper, but I would love to take a nap. So if I could get a nap in there, I would definitely would. A few minutes of just a few minutes to snooze. I would definitely do that. And then I would typically wake up, my mom would be cooking, or I would wake up and I would go down to my grandmother's house because we would usually get out of school like around maybe 2:30. And so I would usually go home, do my homework. So probably around 3:30 or whatever, I was ready to kind of lay down, take a nap. I would take a nap. My grandmother would get home from work around 5:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. And a lot of times I would wait for my grandmother to get home. And I remember she used to have a car. And so I would see her drive down the street and I would, run up the street and kind of wait on her porch for her to go park. And then when she comes in, I would go in the house with her and just kind of spend the evening watching her, talking with her while she cooked, while she rested. And, I would usually eat dinner with her sometimes. And then I would go back home and, get ready for the evening, take my bath, wash up or whatever was required. And, get ready for bed and kind of, get ready to do it all over again. So what was a normal Saturday like for me? So on a Saturday, we typically get up, get up, I guess, relatively early. I don't think the winter or fall or spring or the season, I don't think the season really determined what my Saturday would be like, but we would get up and we would clean. That was like one of the first things. We would Well, no, we would typically get up and we would watch cartoons. So we would find ourselves sitting down, laying around watching cartoons, maybe get a bowl of cereal. So you're eating your cereal, you're laying on the floor, you're watching cartoons, um, you know, and eating your cereal, watching cartoons and eating your cereal. By the time my mom got up, it was like, okay, it's time to start cleaning. So we would all get our buckets and our brooms and whatever, dustpans and all that stuff. And we would go to our assigned, areas. And like I said, I was smaller. So my thing was always the baseboards, and then wipe down doors and wipe down handles and stuff like that. And that was kind of my duties and my responsibilities. So after we cleaned up, we would, typically get dressed and, go outside and play and hang out with your friends, knock on somebody's door to see if they can come out. And, just hang out with your friends. So hang out with your friends and, we would play outside all day. We would play hopscotch or jump rope or jacks or king ball, which was like some of the games that were painted in the street. So we had like this king ball thing, which was like 4 squares. It was king, queen, jack, ace, I think. And I think you would, kind of volley the ball to each other. It'd be like a basketball or like a nice little, what is the balls? What are the balls that you throw to people or throw at people? A dodgeball. So we would, play with that. That would be the ball that we would play with. And I think you had to, like, if you had to spell king, like if you missed the ball, like somebody volleyed it to you, at random and you missed the ball, that was K. And once you got ing, you would be out, and then it'd be down to the last, person till the last person was standing. So that was king ball. Then we played deadlock, which was this whole other convoluted game that was painted in the streets, and you would take the tops of like a milk carton or not carton, like a jug of milk. You would take the top, and you would fill it with tar. And deadlock was you literally had to go from like 1 to maybe 25 or something. And then there was in the center of this block was this big kind of like a ball or a skull and bone, which was like the deadlock. So if you say you're in 1 and you're trying to get to 2, which would be all the way across the square, you would click that, click your, not click, what is the word? Whatever that is with your top. And, prayerfully it would slide across the deadlock. But if it got stuck in the deadlock, then you missed a turn. So just a lot of street games that we would play. Then we would play hide and go seek. As, as the day went on, we would play freeze tag. We would play hide and go seek. We would play hot, cold butter bee. We would play just like playing all these different games. Like we would play outside literally all day from day to the evening. As the evening would wind down, especially in the summertime, we would go to the ice cream parlor and get you a cone of ice cream and walk up there with like all the kids from the community and some of the older kids, like my sister's age and even older. So we would walk to the ice cream parlor, get some ice cream. Then we would come and like sit on somebody's step and we would just talk. I remember there was this guy, Chris, and he was like a real jokester. He was so funny. And he would just like hold court and we would just sit and laugh. And it was always a great time. And one by one, everybody, parents was calling them in. They had to go in the house. And that was a typical Saturday. Cleaning, cartoons, outside with your friends until it was time to come back in the house. And of course you had dinner and, in between that. We really didn't do lunch too much. Like you would kind of be out running around. You might run in the house and grab something, but there was like no formal come sit down and have lunch. But then, somewhere in between there, you would have dinner. And then you go back outside and, hang out with your friends again. So let's see what else. What are my fondest memories growing up on Hobart Street? First of all, Hobart Street was such a community. And I write a lot about it in my book, Reflections of a Life Well Lived, but it was such a beautiful community. It was, I don't even know, like, I wouldn't have called it a poor community. I think it was kind of like a maybe lower middle class. I don't know. Although I don't think anything about my upbringing was middle class, but it really felt very much middle class. It was a close community, close-knit community. People watched out for one another. We care for one another, like not we, but they care for one another's children. I can say for myself, I could go to anybody's house, get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, get a piece of fruit, get some cookies. Um, one of our neighbors nicknamed me Cookie Monster because I absolutely loved and still to this day love cookies. Um, so they named me my nickname, on top of my nickname, one of my nicknames was Cookie Monster. But my childhood nickname, which is probably a whole nother question on here. Yeah, that's another question, so I'm not going to share that with you guys. But they nicknamed me Cookie Monster. But I could go to anybody's house and get a sandwich, anybody's house, and get, like I said, a piece of fruit. If I was doing something wrong, any of the adults on the block could correct me. And they didn't always have to tell my mother. They would just correct me, like, don't do that, And I listened and was obedient. But what I love, some of my fondest memories is just some of the elders on the block. I was always like a really curious kid, always loved older people, hence hanging out with my grandmother. But I would go like to some of the neighbors' houses. And I remember I would literally knock on their door. Like there was Mr. Huff. I would, knock on his door, or I wouldn't even knock on his door. If he 9 times out of 10, he would be sitting on his porch. And I would just come up on the porch and I would sit on the porch and talk with him. And his wife would come out and she would bring both of us a sandwich and we would just sit there and he had like this little swing on the porch and we would just talk. And I couldn't be no more than 5 years old. And of course, Mr. Huff is like an old man. Like, I don't know how old he was. But I would sit on the porch and talk with Mr. Huff. Somebody brought us out a sandwich and a glass of milk. I remember Miss Rogers. I would go and I would literally knock on Miss Rogers' door and ask her if she's coming out. And again, I was a kid, but I just loved being around elders. Like it was something about that I think really helped to shape me, just the person that I am. So those are some of my fondest memories. I remember Ms. Gibson, who lived right next door to me. She would always, hand me a piece of fruit, just so sweet. And my mother would every Easter would say, go over to Ms. Gibson and let them see like your outfit, So we would go down the steps up to Ms. Gibson's house and knock on the door and show her our outfit. And she would invite us in and 9 times out of 10 she had cooked something, so she'd give you a little bit of eggs and a little bit of bacon and maybe some toast or something, but she would just feed you, and that's the kind of community that we grew up in. So many neighbors, oh my gosh. We had the Smiths and the Huffs and the Bells and the oh my gosh, the Drakes, the Gibsons, just so many, the Barrys all the way down the street, and Mr. Henry. Like we had so many people, Mr. Keith, geez, so many people that I can't even, so many people, like the images, the faces are coming to my name, the Chambers. Oh my gosh, so many amazing neighbors that I think for sure kind of helped to shape me as the adult that I am. I absolutely adore growing up on Hobart Street. Like I love, love, love growing up on Hobart Street. So that goes back, how did growing up on Hobart Street shape me or help me to develop? I think one of the main things that I got from growing up on Hobart Street, like I said, I was a kid and people, they really indulged my curiosity. They really indulged my imagination. I could sit and just talk to them about anything, like, and everything was an adventure. Like I can remember, going up from my mother's house to my grandmother's house. And I would skip and I would twirl and I would climb and I would, it's like you're up on one step and down on a step and you're twirling around and you're kicking your leg over the, the little post or the flower pot. Like everything was just such an adventure. And I loved that. I would, skip. And I mean, it was just an adventure. You would run. It was just an adventure. And I think that the way that it shaped me was that I was seen, like people would see me and they would acknowledge me And it wasn't just like, oh, this little kid. It was just like, I'm like, hey, Mr. Huff, and it's like, hey, he'd say my childhood nickname and, um, and just indulge me and encourage me and, let me know that I was valuable and that I was a person and that I was seen and that I had something to say and something of interest. So it was really beautiful growing up on that street. And I think that's something that I've absolutely taken into my entire life is just the fact that no, I'm a person and I have a thought and I have ideas and I have something to say. And so that's always been a huge part of me. And I think that was something that not only that came through my family, but I think was absolutely cultivated through my community. And so I absolutely love that I grew up on Hobart Street. The next question is, were there any role models? There were plenty of role models, and not even in a sense of what I wanted to become as a profession, but just who I wanted to be as a person. Like there was some of the most caring, genuine, authentic, at least in my little child's eye or my little child's mind, some of the most honest, hardworking, um, content, family focused, just caring people that I had ever met in my life. I mean, these were people who didn't have a whole bunch, but they understood the value of community. They cared for one another. They looked out for one another. Um, um, yeah, just the simplicity of life. And I think one of the biggest role models that or even things influences that I got from growing up on Hobart Street is the simplicity, the idea of simplicity in the midst of everything that was crazy and going on in the world. Like growing up, I wouldn't have known that Philadelphia was, as dangerous as it is. I would have known that it was so hard to be Black and all these other things. I didn't know anything about police brutality or, white people didn't like Black people. I didn't know any of that. I grew up and I felt loved and I felt community and I felt secure and I felt valued. And that is the greatest role model or influence that I could have ever had. So yeah, I think everybody on Hobart Street were role models for me. Either role models of what to do and even sometimes what not to do, but all of them were impactful and influential in my life. Everybody. Um, what was my childhood name? I should have put that up at the top. So my childhood name is Buffy. That is what they called me. My mother gave me that nickname. She had a good friend who had a daughter whose name was Jody, and she named me Buffy as a nickname, for the one little, I think it was like a sitcom or something. It was some kind of show that came on with the characters Buffy and Jody. So I think it was Family something. I don't even remember. Yeah, I don't even remember, but the characters was Buffy and Jody. There was like a boy and a girl, a brother and sister. And I think Buffy was the little girl and Jody was the little boy. So yeah, that's that. Um, what would my younger self think about the life that I'm living now? I think my younger self would be very happy with the life that I'm living now. Um, my younger self was always a dreamer, um, was always curious, was always seeing herself in bigger than the space that she was in. Um, always wanted the best for herself, whatever that meant to her. Um, always appreciated just like, again, the simple things in life. A home that's comfortable and quiet and peaceful and decorated to my liking and everything that I can wish to do, I have it at my disposal. If I want to read a book, I can read a book. If I want to write a book, I can write a book. If I want to draw, if I want to do watch television, like if I want to listen to records, if I want to watch a movie, like if I want to cook something, like everything that my heart desires is at my fingertips. And I think my younger self would be very pleased to know that we have created a world and a life for ourselves that is very accommodating to my heart and my desires and my dreams. And one of the things we used to do is play Barbie dolls, not Barbie dolls, paper dolls. And with paper dolls, you're literally cutting out people out of a magazine. 9 times out of 10, it was like a Sears catalog. And not only are you cutting the people out, but you're creating like a house for them. And I would always cut out like the best furniture and the best decorations. And my cousins would always tease me, even as we got older. It's like, you are living like your paper doll house. So, because I do, the way I decorate my house is very aesthetically pleasing to me. It is very much my style, my stamp, is me. And I'm grateful that God has created and blessed me with the ability to create a space that is so representative and so reflective of me. And I'm grateful. So what would the beginning of my fable be? Starting with once upon a time. So once upon a time, there was a little girl who was birthed into a world with great imagination, with great curiosity, with great creativity, with great desire and great vision. And she had the opportunity to go out into the world and make it her own, to paint the life that she wanted, that she desired, to create the world that she wanted, that she desired. And she got to live in it with all of its ups and downs, with all of its challenges. She got to live in it and live through it, still maintaining a spirit of joy, a spirit of peace, happiness, curiosity, desire, creativity, all the things that was birthed and born in her. She was able to walk those things out and continue to still look at herself, even as a 50-year-old woman, look at herself and look in her eyes and see the glimmer and the sparkle of hope, the curiosity, the creativity, the joy, the desire, the love, the laughter, all of those things that her younger self came into this world with. She is still able to embody that, despite the world around her. So blessings to you guys. Thank you to Kerry Washington for this beautiful podcast that she has, and in encouraging this idea in me. I think it was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys learned a lot about me and the street I grew up on. And I hope it gives you joy and make you smile and maybe make you think about yourself and the street that you grew up on. So blessings to you guys. Happy whatever today is. And yeah, this is kind of like a podcast collage. What is this word? Collide? Yeah, I cannot think of my words, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this year or this year. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's Year of Conversations as I clash Girlfriend Therapy podcast, Year of Conversations with Kerry Washington's very famous, very fun, very informative, The Street I Grew Up On. So blessings, guys. Until next time.